Okay, today we're here with Tim Donnell, the proprietor of Tadpoles, just outside of Stuart, Florida. Little name, big performance. What he's done here is he's actually done a test of the epoxies with color before he's done any actual rod building. And as you can see, he's done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 of them. And what he's found is that the consistency of them after they harden is actually fairly flexible, which is an advantage in rod building for sure. We've also got a strip that he poured about a month ago, and this was the ultimate test on the flexibility of the product after it completely hardened, which is what he was looking for. So after this test, past this test, we've now gone to rod building. Okay, so what we have here is a pair of rods that he's building for a client, and they're going to be matching rods for the most part. As you can see, the name of the boat is Ostentatious that he's put on there. And when I say for the most part, it's because it's going to be his and her rods. Now, the components that are in these rods are fairly unusual in the sense that they're very high-end components. So Tim, very quickly, why don't you tell us about some of the components that are in these rods?
Okay, this is a 6.5 foot medium light MHX blank that's been cut down to 6 feet because that's what the customer asked for. We've put some wind dry grips, some CRB reel seat, and some medium duty saltwater guides on it, because we don't want those to be pulled off when you catch a big fish.
And if you'll notice, he's also matched the color of the epoxy that he's putting on the guides here to the rod, so that it's all going to be all white. Yes, that one's not done yet in the back, but this one here is going to get a final coat today that we're going to review.
We've thoroughly mixed this for about 5 minutes. And now we're just quickly going to throw it into a vacuum chamber and evacuate all of the air out of it, or as much as we can. When you're putting pigments into your epoxy, it's not as critical to remove the bubbles because the pigment is really good at hiding that. As soon as that gets to about minus 28 bars, it'll start to boil in there and pull out all the air. Prepared some brushes to work with. This one I've cut down so that we can do our real fine lines on the very ends. This is one that I just kind of use as a mop, and then this one is a little bit stiffer. And before I do anything, I go through with a pair of tweezers and I pull out all the extraneous brush hairs and things because you don't want any of that in your finish. So we're gonna start with the mop.
Now Tim also has a foot pedal down here that he can change the speed of the motor to match whatever he wants to do up here.
A lot of guys will apply their epoxy at like 33 RPM, which is pretty slow. I like it to be going a little bit faster. I find I can get much straighter lines and okay, that's pretty good for that one. Go back to our mop.
So Tim's going to do this for all the guides, and then we'll be back. Now Tim's finished all the eyes, and you can see it's on a slow roll, slow spin here on the slow motor. He thinks he's done up here at the ends. Let me get closer. There is another coat of urethane to go over those to protect them. But the white on white's looking pretty good today.
So now we're going to do a coat of clear on our decorative wrap. And before I do that, I like to go over it with a piece of low-tack masking tape and just pull off any extraneous hairs, any dust, any dirt, anything that might bugger our finish.
Now we're mixing epoxy to go over the graphics, but we're not going to put any pigment in it.
Okay, so that's two. We need 3.3. Okay, so, oh, that's not much.
Now, didn't you like the consistency of this with the thread in some way?
I do. I like how thin this is because it actually soaks into the threads a lot more than a high build epoxy. I don't like the idea of a layer of epoxy just laying on top of these threads. I want it to soak all the way through to the blank and actually become part of the rod. We're just kind of mopping this on right here. This is one of the more difficult places to do. You can't really get around this hook keeper when it's spinning. Normally I would pour this epoxy onto a piece of aluminum foil, which it extends the open time, your working time with it. But because we're doing such a short section at a time for this video, that's not really necessary. But if you're trying to mix up one batch of epoxy and do an entire rod with it, then you really want to pour that onto a piece of aluminum foil, and that will help extend the open time. And all we're doing right now is just trying to mop a whole bunch of this on. Then we'll go through afterwards and smooth it out nice.
How will you smooth it out?
With a brush.
Oh, I thought maybe.
Just want to make sure right now that we're getting plenty to fill in the gaps between the thread, because those are sort of deep spots.
Total Boat does make a compounded polish specifically for this.
I'm anxious to try their UV coat, which they were also kind enough to send us a sample of. I really feel like this product is going to do the job. for right now, we'll stop right there. And then go back, look, just kind of eyeball. I look underneath here and see if I can see any spots where I need a little more epoxy, and I can see that right there I need a little more. So we just kind of mopped it on, and then we've pulled off any real extra. And you can see that that's pretty good. And then I'll just slow it down and see, like for instance right there, there's a tiny little spot that we had missed. And that's what I do. I just spin this real slow, look for any places where we might have missed a spot. And I gotta be honest, that looks pretty great right there. So, we'll get this spinning slow again. I'll show you how to get the bubbles out. So even though we've evacuated this epoxy before we put it on, there are still some microscopic bubbles there. And as it soaks into the thread, of course, it's displacing air, and so you're going to get some bubbles from that as well. And the way to get those bubbles out is with fire. And you just gently want to wave a little bit of flame. You can use an alcohol lamp. I would not use a candle because it leaves black soot in your epoxy. But if you just wave a little bit of flame, like there's a bubble right there that doesn't want to come out. And any that don't come out, this is the first coat. Any bubbles that don't come out, we're going to trim them off with a razor blade, and the second coat will be perfect. So there you have it. There's your decorative. There's your